Good morning. The Talmud tells us that King David once asked God, Tiyashar olamcha b'shava, which means, God, why didn't you create equality in this world? Why are there rich people and the poor people are dependent on the rich people? Why couldn't everyone just receive everything they need directly from you? Why couldn't the world be created in a communist fashion where God distributes equal wealth to every person? And God answered King David and said, Olam chesed yibana. The world is built on kindness. God deliberately designed the world in a way that there's always equalities, not just with regard to wealth, but with regard to everything. There are people who are healthier and people who are less healthy. There are people who are wiser and people who are less wise. But in one way or another, we all have to be givers and takers. And that's what God wanted. God wanted a world filled with kindness. This week's Torah portion begins with the words, God commanding Moshe, tell the Jewish people, V'yikchu li, they shall take from me an offering, gold, silver, copper, all the materials that they should contribute to build the tabernacle. And the question is, it should have said, they shall give from me an offering. Why does it say, they shall take from me? And one of the answers is that God is telling us is that there's nothing wrong with asking for help, for being a taker, because that's part of God's plan. It's not just the rich man who gives the charity that is fulfilling God's will, but the receiver, the one who has to ask for the help. They too are fulfilling God's will and the divine plan in the world to give the world an opportunity to have a giver, to those who are able to be generous and kind and loving, so the world can have kindness and charity in it. And therefore, when you are in the unfortunate position to have to receive, don't feel that you are inadequate. Realize that you are fulfilling God's will as much as the one who is giving is fulfilling God's will. And furthermore, God is saying, don't feel bad that you have to receive, that you have to ask for help. Because I too had to ask for help. I had to tell Moshe, V'yikchu li, take from me, I need. So if Almighty God can ask for help, if God Himself sets a precedent of asking, don't be ashamed to ask for help when help is needed. There's a story told about a very rich man who had a devoted employee who worked with him for many, many years. And one time they were on a business trip overseas, and the boss got very ill and he was about to die, and he said to his devoted employee, he says, I'm going to pass away and I give you my wealth, and go home to my wife and my children, and you can give them whatever you want, and the rest you can keep for yourself. The devoted employee goes back, tells the wife the terrible news that her husband died on this business trip, and left him the business and all his wealth. And he said, as per his instructions, give my wife and children whatever you want. And so I decided I want to give you 25% of his wealth, and I'm going to keep 75% for myself. The wife was devastated and said, how could you give me 25%? I'm his wife, at least I should get 50%. And so they went to the rabbi and presented the dispute. The rabbi listened and saw the written document where the boss said, I'm giving it to you, and give my wife whatever you want. And he ruled and he said that the wife will receive 75% and the employee will receive 25%. And the employee protested and said, how could you only give me 25%? He clearly said, I should give his wife whatever I want. And the rabbi said exactly. What he said was, whatever you want, you should give my wife. Since you wanted 75% for yourself, that's the real amount that he wanted you to give his wife. And therefore his wife will get 75% and you will get 25%. And so the Torah says, take from me an offering. Realize that I designed the world in a way that they're givers and takers. And when you are the receiver, realize you're fulfilling God's will as well. And also when you're the giver, realize that that person is the fulfilling divine will of asking. God planned the world that there should be givers and takers. If you are fortunate to be in the position to be the giver, because there's nothing more difficult than giving of your wealth than having to actually ask and rely and depend on others for wealth, Be grateful that you have the position to give, and therefore take into consideration the person who's receiving and the much more difficult role that they have to play in this world, and give kindly and generously and fulfill God's world plan to have a world filled with kindness. Have a wonderful day.